Alex, thank you so much for coming on today. And what I'm really excited to chat about, I've actually been reading and following along, but for those who haven't, you've launched a brand new newsletter, but that's part of bigger, broader, ambitious dreams, it sounds like, in building potentially a media company. So I'm really excited to have folks learn more from you and learn about your business. But to ask you the question you probably get asked all the time, who are you? Can you share a little bit about yourself? And then what is this business that you are building?
Yeah, excited to chat here. Yeah, I guess a quick background on myself. Pretty much spent 8 years as a operator in early stage startups. Kind of joined as employee 11 and 1, so got to see luckily some success and not so much of success across 2 different companies. And kind of parlayed some of that early stage operating experience into the investor side, where I've spent the past 5 years investing in early stage startups. So kind of year one was very small angel investments on the personal front, then started getting into this funky world, which I'll talk more about, of SPVs, special purpose vehicles, and syndicates, which is kind of where I've been leaning in the past couple of years, and have also gone on to raise a small micro fund of managing just a couple $1 million as well. So yeah, that's kind of been the background to date. And then in terms of kind of what I've just recently started, so I launched a newsletter, which is kind of, I guess I'd call it product one of a larger vision media company. And it's called Last Money In, which is the name of the newsletter. And essentially, I've got a partner whose name's Zach Ginsberg, who's somebody I've co-syndicated a bunch of deals with over the past probably 3-4 years. And we kind of saw an opportunity within the venture capital ecosystem. We've played in this like syndicate space, where it's kind of a backward process of a traditional venture fund that raises money on a specific thesis and then will deploy that capital over a certain period of time across a certain number of portfolio companies. Yeah, the syndicate approach is a bit backwards, where we actually will find particular companies that we're interested to invest in. We'll secure an allocation, typically alongside a lead VC who's kind of pricing the round and setting the terms. And then we will take that specific deal and go to our LPs to raise the capital. So they kind of have the opportunity to say yes, no, figure out what they want to participate on a deal by deal basis, which differs quite a bit from a traditional venture capital fund. So having kind of built a bunch of experience in doing this over the previous years, we kind of saw an opportunity to share a lot of the kind of ins and outs of how syndicates work, how they're different versus traditional venture funds, how to build a syndicate right. Both Zach and I have been doing this over the past years and built pretty sizable syndicates in terms of number of deals we've done, capital deployed, and portfolio companies. So yeah, really taking this opportunity to speak something, I guess, to speak about something that we feel has not really been well defined or understood as this cool opportunity to invest in the venture capital ecosystem. So I'll stop there. Hopefully that's a helpful intro there.
That's awesome. I have a ton of questions, but first thing I do want to ask is, I love the thought and the strategy of this is product one with bigger dreams of this media company. How did you end up deciding that product one would be a newsletter? And is it working? I guess it's early to say. I saw you pass 1,000 subscribers recently. Congrats. Hopefully we watch this in a few years and it's 1 million or 10,000, hopefully more. But yeah, how did you decide product one newsletter, and what was the thought process there?
Yeah, it's actually a funny story to that. So, right, as somebody who just consumes media through newsletters and podcasts, like, I don't know, for whatever reason, podcasts have been buzzier and kind of more exciting and insightful to me. So Zach and I kind of agreed that, okay, great, we're going to talk about this. Let's do a podcast. And we even did some like practice sessions of us like, pretending to do a podcast and just, get the feel of just kind of the banter and talking through things. And in parallel to officially launching, we actually sat down with Sam Parr, who founded The Hustle and runs My First Million, one of the largest business podcasts, and of course is a co-founder of Hampton, which is how we met. And yeah, we kind of just said, hey, Sam, like, this is what we're thinking about doing. We want to launch this podcast, like, really curious to hear your feedback. And his feedback was very to the point in that it was really cool content idea, start with a newsletter, and then maybe graduate onto a podcast from there. And I can get into some of the details, but he convinced us that. And so far, 2 months in, I feel strongly that he was correct and pointed us in the right direction.
You give a 30-second insight into what convinced you, or maybe the trade-offs between podcast and newsletter, because it sounds like it's a matter of when, not if, for both of them. But what ended up swinging you over to newsletter first?
Yeah, so I think, right, because I don't have such a strong personal brand. I'd like to think I've made a lot of headway over the past 2 months. This is something I've really leaned into. He kind of highlighted how it's a lot harder to get listeners and podcasts. Typically you're doing 30, 60, 90 minutes. So it's a much larger investment from kind of consumers to buy into that versus newsletters, which are a little bit more quickly digestible. Also, I guess you could make the argument like easier to kind of prepare, write, collect your thoughts versus more on the fly of a podcast. And I think he was right. I mean, it was easy to listen to him as somebody who's pretty well versed in building both a newsletter and a podcast. And I think he did the stepwise approach, and following his steps made a lot of sense at the time.
Got it. Well, I think what I like about this is you started. And I think for a lot of people, especially aspiring entrepreneurs, that can be the hardest thing. And once you start, it doesn't get easier per se, but you have the momentum. With that in mind, though, this is product one. And as you were navigating through the process, at what point did you start to think or consider, we need to actually turn this into a real business? So how did entity formation play into that? And if and when, at what time did you say, hey, it's time to actually understand and learn what we need to do here?
Yeah, great question. I think like in the background of kind of preparing, basic things like a logo, what newsletter platform we're going to use, and what are we going to talk about, thinking through the content, we always knew it was going to be a business to some extent. And so, fortunately, as we kind of got started here, we did have some inbound interest on sponsorships and actually working with real partners there. And I think kind of in parallel to that, that was like okay, like we actually need to incorporate this. Let's think about how we're going to do this. Of course, I wanted to do something that was efficient, fast, and well done, right? It's not something I look forward to doing, but something that's important to get set up and get set up correctly. So it's really kind of okay, we're working with external partners, right? We're going to be starting to generate revenue. We need to get this all set up.
Got it. And before you actually started the process, what was the biggest fear or question or maybe misconception you had now that you've gone through it?
Yeah, I would say just the unknown. I'm far from an expert on kind of business entities and LLC structures. And so the unknown of kind of what's the right way to set this up for our specific business. And then also the kind of ongoing support, filings, things of that sort that, I would say it's tough to be on top of and a little intimidating to navigate into my already busy kind of lifestyle of how to stay on top of this and not fall behind and manage it all correctly.
Got it. Have to ask this question. Wouldn't be doing my job as a founder and asking. So how did you first hear about doola? A little user research question there.
I mean, as an early stage investor, I think I knew about the company and the ecosystem. I was familiar that doola was a YC company. Maybe knew a little bit about you and probably through some of your presence on LinkedIn and other areas. And yeah, knew doola was kind of a player in the space, had kind of cool external signal, but frankly didn't know the details at the time.
Gotcha. Super helpful feedback. I appreciate you answering that question. And in the last couple of minutes, what I do want to ask you, there are many entrepreneurs, people listening who are on the fence about starting, and it could really be anything. It could be starting an Amazon business, selling e-commerce goods. It could be starting a SaaS business. It could be, hey, I want to apply to YC, or it could be, hey, I want to start a newsletter. what piece of advice would you give to someone on the fence, on the edge, who is thinking about starting but is hesitant to take the leap?
Yeah, I mean, part of me is just like the let me jump on the Nike bandwagon and say just do it, right? Like I think it's important to be prepared, but y- y- I think a lot of people try to over prepare for things, and you kind of need to get out there, figure out the plan, and just start to whatever the business may be. Right, for a newsletter, get out there, figure out how you're gonna get your content out there, structure it, and build a couple weeks or posts of content ready to go, and figure the rest out. I think you see a lot of people who kind of talk themselves out of things too early, whereas maybe going out there trying to figure out how to get small early customers, signs of product market fit is one of the most challenging things. So literally just doing it, and also don't let the fear of striking out get in your way. I've struck out so many times with so many ideas that I've talked through with people. Just keep going, be relentless, and just do it.
I love that. And that is a perfect segue because actually, funny enough, within Doola, our slogan is just doula it. We've a little nod to Nike, but yeah, hey, if you need to form a business, just doula it. So I'm gonna finish with that. Alex, thank you so much. Last but not least, where can people find you and your growing personal brand? It absolutely is growing, as well as the newsletter. What's the best place to find you?
By far LinkedIn. So just Alex Pattis on LinkedIn. And yeah, have ramped up a lot of content. So hopefully people can tune in and provide feedback.
Awesome. Well, thanks a ton for coming on. Definitely subscribe to the newsletter. It's very informative and excited to see how this business grows.
Awesome, Arjun. Just do it.
Just do it indeed.